We're live.
All right. This is Blaine Pardoe. Welcome to Writers Fix Problems. I'm the author of the Blue Dawn series and the Land and Sea series, but we're not going to be talking about those today. What we're going to be talking about is a really cool book that I read for all of you Sibley fans out there who want to talk about China being a threat. And our guest today is Mike Bentley, who wrote the book, The Second Pearl. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you, Blaine. It's a real honor to be here.
Well, you're going to like it. The way I do this, just so that people know, when I always try to read a book in its entirety so I can at least give you an opinion of it. I'd like to pull up the review I'm going to post on Amazon for Mike's book because it took me several weeks to get through it. I'm reading about 8 books at once. But it was a fun book to go through. And I think you guys out there who are military and political thriller fans are going to enjoy it. So let me tell you what the review is. What would happen if China decided to take Taiwan and use Japan's Pearl Harbor strategy as the basis for their operation? Well, Mike Bentley's book, Second Pearl, does just that. Mike crafts a complex political and military thriller around China striking not just at Pearl Harbor, but all of our far-flung Pacific bases and the west coast of the United States. Extrapolating technology that is in the works right now, Bentley puts together a vast plan to take the U.S. out of the war, a war that we all know is coming in the real world. The fighting rages from the Koreas to Australia to the western ports in America, and where America reels from what could very well be a knockout punch. If I had any qualms with this book, is it's not entirely character-driven. Given the scale and the scope of this, and I'm sure that really wouldn't have been possible. And I've tried to come up with ways that I would have done it, and I couldn't. Counterbalancing that, though, is a fun-filled plot with so many twists and turns that leave you both unexpected thrills and delightment. I would also say my other disappointment is the author really didn't leave us any room for a sequel, which really disappointed me. But this is a book that has an end. So for you guys out there who want to know what the war might look like, this is a great one from that perspective. So that was my review of your book, Mike. What do you think?
No, that's very positive. Thank you so much. I think it's accurate too. So I'm grateful for that. That's very well thought out, and thank you. You really touched base there. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you a little bit. You've got a cool background, and we've been talking before the show a little bit about some of the stuff you've done in your life, etc. What can you tell us a little bit about people who've never heard of you and never read any of your work?
Well, I come from California and grew up in a very, very privileged area in the sense that I got to know World War II admirals and generals, and they inspired me from day one. Almost like grandfather figures. Admiral Charles Todd Singleton was a very close family friend, and he was designated by the chain of command to go to Japan after the war and help rebuild the Japanese Navy. So he was one of the key figures that selected those officers that had been perhaps more junior during World War II, but we're just good professionals. And armies, there are good guys and bad guys, but the core professionals go through and are somewhat apolitical, and so he did that, and so the heritage of the current Japanese Navy are those officers, probably now mostly deceased, but they rebuilt themselves into the self-defense force, and then now, of course, they're transitioning to when they named one of their destroyer, whatever they call them, it suspiciously looks like an aircraft carrier called the Kaga. We're realizing that the Japanese Navy is back, and they are rapidly growing and highly, highly professional. So Admiral Singleton was just a wonderful mentor to me. And then the Admiral Earl Stone, E.E. Stone, was the executive officer on the USS California when it settled in the mud on December 7th, 1941. And he was kind of a grandfather figure, and was one of the key persons that started the Night Maritime Museum in Monterey. And I used to go in and talk to him, and he had this wonderful photograph up on the wall of the USS Wisconsin. And I said, "Oh, I know that. It's an Iowa-class battleship." I said, "Did you ever get to ride on that ship, Admiral?" And he said, "Well, yes, I did. I took it to sea in 1944." So he was the plank owner, the first captain of the Wisconsin. And so with that kind of background, you can only imagine how interested a young boy was. That was, 60s boy. And then I started reading military fiction, and I suppose the person I dedicated this book to was Alistair MacLean, who was just a wonderful writer, prolific writer, over 30 books, and just great adventure for a boy to read. And by those standards, it's fairly clean, I guess you could say. It was action, adventure, and spies, and army and beating Nazis and all the great stuff. And they were somewhat, several of them were based on his own life. He had been on ships escorting. He was a British guy, British Navy, escorting convoys up to Murmansk in the North Atlantic, and fighting the U-boats and all that. And then he was later transferred to the South Pacific, and wrote South by Java Head. And many of his books were made into movies, Ice Station Zebra and Force 10 from Navarone and The Guns of Navarone. And those are just, for boys that love to read in those days, those were some of my inspiring authors. And then later on, of course, I got into Ludlum and Clancy, and I went into ministry after seminary, and have read C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and you name it. I have that kind of all those genres too. So those things inspire a young guy, and hopefully somebody will get some inspiration from my little tone there.
Now, you served in the military as a minister, didn't you?
I did. I went through seminary. It takes about 10 years after high school to qualify to be a military chaplain. So you have your typical 4 years of college, and then your 3 years of seminary. And then it's denominationally specific after that. And my denomination required 2 years minimum of home service, working in a North American church. And then you could either, there were three avenues you could, you could be a hospital chaplain after that. You could be a military chaplain after that. You could be a missionary in the more traditional mission sense, or you could continue to be a North American kind of typical pastor on the local street corner. So I chose to go into the military chaplaincy. And a quick funny story. Growing up, my mother was from San Francisco, and became very good friends with the family of the senior chaplain of the Presidio of San Francisco, who actually retired as a brigadier general, I guess after World War II. And this is the all-time great name for a chaplain. His name was Chaplain Horny.
Oh.
So today I think I would change my name, but in those days it didn't mean the same thing that the double entendre of today.
Yeah, I'd put a fake French E on the end of that, Hornier.
Hornier.
Horny.
That's like counting to money.
So I had just a great career. All these people that influenced me. I was so fortunate, and went off. Started. If you ever saw Goldie Hawn in, what was the name of that funny where she joined the army and she was expecting the
Private Benjamin.
Yeah, Private Benjamin. She was saying, "Where are the condominiums? Where's the ocean?" Well, my first posting was Fort Baker on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge, next to Sausalito, where I'm looking back across the panorama of San Francisco, at one of the most beautiful harbor views in the history of mankind, and going, "Yeah, this army gig, it's pretty good. I really like this. This is excellent." but reality set in when I started getting some overseas. I volunteered for Korea and served there, and that was great. It was I was right up on the DMZ, about 11 miles. We were when I about the second day I got there, I said, "How close are we actually to the DMZ?" And my driver, who was Korean, said, "Let's drive up there and see." So about 15 minutes later, there we were. And he said, "We're in artillery range to the north where we have our little bungalows." So we called them hooches. And so that was my year in Korea. I loved it, loved the Korean people. And so the military's promise of travel is real, and I really loved it. And then
Well,
I
boy,
went off to the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt as part of the Camp David's peacekeeping group. And I was there in '83 when the Marines got hit in Beirut, and that was quite a day, yeah, and a bad day for the Marines and for America. But our Marines are tough; they got through it. And then later, I went to Desert Storm in '91, and I was the deputy command chaplain of 2nd COSCOM in 7th Corps, and was out there and the war really, the ground war ended so fast. I mean, it was such a comprehensive victory for us that it showed the best of American combat, combined arms, and the we beat Soviet doctrine and Soviet equipment, and there was quite a bit of stubby pencil work going on in the Kremlin after that war. Going, we were, those guys in the Fulda Gap that were standing there ready for the Soviet invasion, like Red Storm Rising. All of a sudden, I think the Soviets were a little hesitant to take on American Abrams tanks. So then I finished out my career. I was going to stay in and have a full long career, but about the same time I was up for promotion to lieutenant colonel, we ended our embargo in Vietnam, and I'm actually a Vietnam historian. That's my background and in history. And so I resigned my commission and went off to Vietnam and did 25 years of humanitarian work, kind of off and on.
wow.
My master's thesis is or it used to be on the Army War College recommend list. So it's about aid in Vietnam and our carrot and stick that failed. So I have a forthcoming book that's nonfiction about that. I'm turning the thesis into a book, but it's down the road here a while. So anyway, that's a little overview of my Army chaplain career. It's very, very good.
That's exciting. And you're a writer who works full time right now anyway, which is always a challenge. I've been there. It's amazing when you look at the tapestry that you just painted of your background, how much of that is fitting into your book, Second Pearl. Because Vietnam plays a very is one of the crucial stages that's there, as well as the West Coast. Your experience there, and I know you live there now, it definitely comes through. And even the sense of loss that you had with the Marines is definitely reflected in this devastating attack that is portrayed in your book. I'd like you, if you could, without ruining the book, because I don't want people to go buy the book, because I enjoyed it. Let's tell a little bit of what the story is behind Second Pearl.
Okay. Well, I had distinct inspiration for that, and it's the movie Tora 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 that I just loved. It came out, I guess, 1970-ish or so, and I liked the way they did it. It was fair to both sides. It was not a hack job to beat up the evil Japanese. It was a book that a story that showed both sides, that allowed the military guys to tell their story, and it portrayed Fuchida, I think, pretty fairly, and also Genda, who was the planner, and Yamamoto, of course, the great admiral there. And I appreciate that way of doing things. And I think Clancy did that too. When he talks about, for instance, in Red Storm Rising or The Bear and the Dragon, which of course is very, very a very good story. Back when he was optimistic that the Russians would be our friends. That story showed the limitations and the strategic failure of Japan in only awakening us and really getting our military industrial complex fully launched on that. That was, you just don't want to get America's, if you have time for us to build up for a couple of years, that's not the way to go. So I took Genda's advice and wrote my book. And Commander Genda, who was the one of the chief strategists of the whole Pearl Harbor attack, said you cannot just attack Pearl Harbor, sink their ships, and then finish the war in the Pacific. He said you've got to take this wider. You've got to go to America, and you've got to get them fighting you on their own ground. Of course, they never had any interest in conquering America. That was foolishness. But he wanted us to be fighting 6,000 miles away, not 3,000 miles away, and so I tried to incorporate that thinking, and in fact, I took it a little bit farther and had the Chinese subs, reaching out and touching America all over, and with their modern technology, it's real. They have 6 ballistic missile submarines, and if they park in international waters, where they're fully allowed to be, they can reach every point in America. So, and then there's the other technology, the drones. That's got to be a big part of any future war, and we see it in Ukraine right now. I mean, drones are real.
Yeah, it was fascinating because, first of all, this is a book that's going to leave you with a gut punch. Okay, I'm going to caution anybody watching this.
Yeah,
because America is going to take it. It is going to get the haymaker to the stomach. I mean,
yeah.
It is painful to watch. And it's funny because I just found myself at night just going page after page. I'm like, let's go. I want to get further because I'm like, this is hard to take as an American when you see what's going down. But it was really good, and the bounce back obviously was well worth it. But you introduce what I call some wonderful technological MacGuffins that make this possible. And by the way, they're totally plausible. I was wondering if you might want to talk a little bit about some of the tech that you introduced that make this such an interesting scenario.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, the big picture in our task forces, without touching about drones yet, is that in any one of our carrier task forces, about 10 to 12, and they have a finite number of anti-ballistic missiles, the SM-3s that are designed to shoot down an incoming ballistic missile. And so just in a math equation, if you send one of our wonderful Navy task forces into a combat situation, say even 500 miles from the Chinese coast, outside of the first line, we have, it's not a secret. You can find it on Wikipedia. The Chinese know this. There are less missiles on any one of our task forces than they can shoot at us at the task force. So if they are absolutely dedicated to the hell they're going to experience for sinking one of our task forces, they can do it. They can send several hundred ballistic missiles at one of our task forces, and at the same time have some other things coming at us, like submarines and fast boats with sea skimmers and all of that launched toward us. And they could sink our entire task force with 10,000 sailors. And they could probably do it 2 or 3 times with the missiles they already have. So that's just one stark reality. And it's sickening to write, because I can envision those young boys out there in the ocean. I can see the ships burning. That's the hard thing to write here, but it's a cautionary tale. I'm trying to wake people up and say, let's get real here. This could happen. Of course, we would retaliate, and there'd be awful things happen to the communist Chinese military, but and unfortunately to a lot of civilians as well. But there'd be an awful price to pay if we really have to fight them. And And we should, if they try to attack Taiwan, we should help defend them. They're an, a truly free republic, a democracy, and a friend. And that first island chain is absolutely vital to containing communist Chinese expansionism. But anyway, I kind of went down a rabbit hole there a little bit.
No, it's great because it's so rare that you get a novel that is timely as yours. And Mark Sibley's book is good as well because it gives a very different perspective as to how the Chinese might wage the war. But both of these being works of fiction hit on some ice cold realities with this, and we've talked about it on the Council of Future Conflicts as well, that the United States Navy hasn't fought a major naval engagement since World War II. And a lot of our thinking and a lot of our premises are based on Cold War strategies and tactics. Right. And that's not necessarily what's going to be employed here. You also create a wonderful way to get the enemy forces to the West Coast that scared the crap out of me a little bit, simply because even if they weren't these super ships, they could be used just a standard cargo container ship. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. On both coasts, I have standard freighters, just the kind of freighters that ply the seven seas. That China has hundreds of them. They go up and down our coasts every day. They're legitimate. They're just part of international trade. But in their holds, they could easily have approximately Volkswagen size mother drones that can release canisters of small drones. And this technology exists. These are drones about the size of a bumblebee that would have just a little bit of explosive material in it, maybe the size of the impact of a gunshot, say, some rifle bullet, something like that. And these mother drones can be released in great numbers and can release clouds of these bumblebee-sized drones. And that technology, whether I don't know, of course, if those weapons exist, but they certainly can exist. And I hope I'm not giving the Chinese a hint on something to do. I've always wondered if Tom Clancy felt bad about having that one pilot fly his 747 into the U.S. Capitol building. If, in retrospect, he wondered if he'd given the terrorists an idea they hadn't thought of before. But I'm pretty sure the Chinese planners are way ahead of me.
Oh, it was amazing. And, these cargo container ships that appear in the book don't just have the drones in them. They have an entire landing force,
right?
Tanks, vehicles, command control centers, etc. And quite literally just park in these ports. And it's not just the United States. You go on a pretty broad tapestry here. Right. So who all gets invaded or attacked during your book?
Right. Well, I thought to pick up on the goals of Imperial Japan in World War II, they did not want to conquer outside of Asia. They had no interest in that. What they wanted was to get raw materials for their home islands, for their own people. And so Indonesia had the oil, and a lot of their neighboring countries are just wonderful gardens, bountiful in everything, raw materials. Mainland China that they invaded is just chock-a-block with every kind of raw material. And so their goals were strategic in the sense of just keeping everybody away from what they really wanted to do, which was conquer usable Asia. And so that's the scenario of the book, that everything they do in Australia, Japan, Thailand, just out wherever, they're doing it just to keep those forces at bay so that they can consolidate their gains in Asia. They want to take Asia. They want to conquer it, hold it, exploit it, and just have instead of Japan's, what was it, co-equal prosperity
Great,
sphere, they
the
want to
Greater
have
East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere.
there it is. They want to have their version of that, but bigger and better, and have the potential enemies pushed back worldwide, so that no one will interfere in their work of conquering and exploiting. So that's kind of the big picture of the book. And I started talking about the freighters. Those were just the freighters were just launching drones to suppress the anti-ballistic missile and military ships, the anti-ballistic missile capability on our ships. And that's half of the technology. The other half is that they actually have a something I believe exists, but I don't know it for sure because I'm sure it's secret. An ability to drop a munition straight down about 500 feet, so when it hits, it creates a kind of a reaction with the metal of the ship's surface, either a submarine or a surface ship, and it melts down through it. It's like a shape charge that puts a highly reactive, almost metal melting substance into the framework of the ship and disables it. And so that's why our fleet is knocked out worldwide, and our allies' fleets, and the ability to fight back is also knocked out at the same time. So we're really helpless. They really do do a gut punch, and we're just kind of floundering there.
Well, you definitely also channeled your inner Clancy there. This isn't just a military series. This is one where we get the spies and espionage stuff.
Yeah.
One of the best characters I think you had in the book. I'm not going to ruin it for folks, but I'm still recovering. But it was good. That was fun to see, because it does show that we're not just sitting or waiting for it. We're being aggressive and looking for the intel to kind of piece this together.
Well, one of my sub agendas was to praise our intel community. Our clandestine forces are active worldwide. I mean, we can all just speculate on how extensive. I have no knowledge of that, apart from just my own vivid imagination and having read umpty-ump spy novels. But those folks in the clandestine world are just beyond amazing and beyond courageous. And if you want to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, the Spy Museum has you can go onto YouTube and just type in the Spy Museum, and they have one real retired spy after another coming on and doing presentations. And the people that do the subterfuge and all the cloak and dagger things and the tricks of the trade, and I'm really surprised that they reveal as much as they do, but I've been listening to them for a while and pick up all kinds of good ideas. And so I praise them heartily. I try to have a lot of strong female characters in the book. The clandestine service, for all of you out there, women who are looking for adventure and danger and all of the amazing challenges of serving in our government, the clandestine world wants you. And particularly if you have, for instance, if you are a Chinese American woman with some language ability, and are brave and are interested in serving your country, give them a call. They'll definitely talk to you. And I just admire these people so much, and they're woven in and out of the book. Really praise them. And then further, the Secret Service agents, they're prominent in the book too, and they definitely take a bullet for for the particular person they're guarding.
Yeah.
So that's in fact, all my work, I have those guys in there. Guys and gals are just amazing people to me. I'm very, very pedestrian sort of person compared to those guys.
Well, what's kind of cool, and I didn't call your book a techno thriller because I always feel that kind of pigeonholes a piece to
Right.
where people are like, oh, this is all about new technology and stuff. And you do introduce some stuff that we haven't seen a great deal of in fiction, but you also have some real low tech solutions. You have teams all over the country doing what I would call sabotage
Right.
on a grand scale, coming in through the southern border,
Right.
infiltrating the country. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because that to me was so stunningly realistic
Oh, thank you.
and it's definitely something I enjoyed reading.
Thank you. Well, we know for sure that China has a number of special operations kinds of units, very much like we do. They have their equivalent of the SEALs and Delta and Marine Recondo and Air Force Pararescue and I don't want to miss any of the services. Just Army Rangers. They have equivalent folks, and they're trained in subversion and sabotage and infiltration and sniper teams and your scout sniper people that the Marine Corps is so famous for, or American Sniper. We all saw that movie, real guy with a tragic ending, who saved so many lives. He was the guy at the top of the building shooting enemy snipers to protect our guys on the ground. And China has the PLA and the PLAN have all those kinds of units, and so they have very easily through Mexico, which is a fairly easy country to enter, and then matriculate through our southern porous southern border without offense. Not to say anything political on the show, but if we built a fence, perhaps that would make that a little bit harder. But anyway,
Oh heavens, I certainly would hate to get political on
yeah.
this channel, Mike.
I always try to
No.
avoid it, but I'm willing to go there.
So all you need to do is to get in quite a throng of people going across our border, and as we know, our wonderful agents down there are just completely overwhelmed as they catch a number of people and process them, and they have to release them into the United States. So there's got to be all kinds of folks that don't get captured and arrested and processed. And I don't blame the average poor Joe trying to come up here and get a better life. I'm not angry at them at all. I don't like our politics surrounding the issue, but so it'd be very, very easy for communist infiltrators to come in carrying a backpack or a valise or whatever, a army duffel bag full of goodies, and to situate themselves. I picked a number in the book, 1,700 teams. It's only 3,400 pairs. Very easy. I mean, 34. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people streaming across the border. So these 3,400 or 1,700 two-person teams set up themselves everywhere throughout the United States in strategic locations just to create some local chaos. And if they're not able to bring tube weapons with them to shoot into a tank of gasoline, for instance, or whatever, anybody can buy a half dozen 5-gallon cans of gas and take it down to anything that you want to burn and get a real rip-roaring fire going there that calls in all of the local the first responder groups, and and you have 1,700 of those going off everywhere in the United States, just chaos. And all of a sudden, giant, Pan Max ships are landing at our ports with legitimate pre-inspected or at least pre-issued cargo manifests, and lo and behold, tanks and every other kind of thing are pouring into our port cities, and you can just see that it's very plausible. God, forbid it ever happens, but so that's kind of the one group, the 1,700 teams create chaos. So our government is looking at that, and meanwhile, here they come, and they just slip right in as under the cover of a civilian ship.
Well, it was one of the things too that I loved about your book, and I'm going to encourage everybody, obviously, to pick this book up because I really enjoyed it. But one of the things that was really fun was at the end, Mike has a section of the research he did. And there's a couple of things when I saw it in the book, I was like, gee, could you really take out all of our bombers, this quickly? It seems like we would always have more bombers in play and things along those lines. And when you get to the research section, it's like, Mike brings the credentials with him. He goes, hey, this is where I got the information from, and lays it out for you. And you're like, holy crap, we're more susceptible to some of these things like sabotage.
Right.
I love the fact that you had these teams out there with 50 caliber sniper rifles taking pot shots at these bombers out on the tarmac. And the amount of damage that it does. You put a couple rounds into the engines and a couple rounds into the cockpit, and it's badly compromised. And it's going to take a long time to get those things operable.
Right.
It really was a nail biter. And I think you did it in such a good way that I was oh, crap. And I was worried about that one bomber crew. Every time I heard they landed or took off, I was like, oh, thank God they're in the air. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And I encourage you, if you're going to pick up The Second Pearl, make sure you do go and read that last chapter about this, because it really does kind of solidify a lot of what's in the book.
Well, that's real. Unfortunately, all you have to do is Google Whiteman Air Force Base and look at the aerials, and they're there for everybody to see. And there are some of our $2 billion wonderful Spirit bombers inside the shelters, but they always have one or two out on the tarmac just sitting there. So, I mean, that's just real. It's the same with our B-1 Lancers, with our B-52 fleet, with the new bombers that are coming out here, hopefully any year now. The prototype is out. They'll have some of them just sitting in a big row outside of everywhere. And a sniper rifle, easy, a good shooter, even a half-ass shooter can shoot a mile with a 50 caliber Barrett sniper rifle. So, and you put a few rounds into one of these things, and a $2 billion bomber is just a pile of junk. It can't fly. So it's just awful.
It was sobering, and it was, it's one of the things I think there's an illusion that that we as Americans have, that we're safe.
Yeah.
We're in our homeland, and we haven't had to deal with much of an invasion other than the Aleutians and the War of 1812. We really haven't had to deal with a coastal invasion at all, or a threat to our homeland. So when you do it in this book, it is a gut punch, and it makes you go. There's parts of it, I have to admit, not being a fan of California, I was enjoying a little bit of the carnage there, but at the same time, you're going, okay, how plausible is this? And like you said, there's a lot of these cargo container ships out there that we assume we know what's in them.
Right.
And it's a little bit scary, the concept that might be a booby prize for us all.
Particularly when you have, for instance, communist China owning buku land in our heartland that just so happens if you stand on property owned by communist Chinese and have a pair of binoculars, lo and behold, you can look at our Air Force bases. So I'm sure there's no, that's purely coincidental, but nevertheless, it's worth noting that maybe we shouldn't do that.
Well, Mike, what are you working on now? You know, you've got this book out and it's been out for about, what, I think a year and a half or so.
That's right. That's right.
And it's a good book, guys. Definitely pick up The Second Pearl. But what are you working on now, or what are you looking to work on?
Well, thank you. I've got with the characters in this book, they carry over to a new book I've just started that it's about Ukraine, and this is going to be a carry on where these characters, they're agency people, and they'll hopefully have one adventure after another. Someone will survive to go from one hotspot to another in the world. We can't kill everybody off, but so I'm going to continue the characters, some of the characters in the main characters in this book into some others. One I've already started about the Ukraine, and it's being paused a little bit right now because of the knuffle that's going on there. But when it shakes out a little bit, we're going to have another book come out about Ukraine, and I have one kind of in the it's on the back burner right now about Iran, and I served in the Middle East twice in the military, so I've always had an eye out for Iran. Their mischief knows no bounds, and
That's a great line, by the way. Watcher, we got to remember that one.
Write it down, boss.
Their mischief.
And then thank you. And then I have another line going with it's the completely different characters that it's an American family with a military background, but it has half of it has a supernatural element in it. I'm a minister by training and by background, and half of my career as an Army chaplain, half doing humanitarian work in Vietnam. And so it's what I've done is take demonic and angelic characters, but give them military rank and structure. So these are echelon-based organizations that one, of course, all good and one all bad, but they have real characters. I got this idea, the inspiration from C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters, where Uncle Wormwood is, or Uncle's, I can't remember. One is the uncle, one is the nephew. You have Screwtape and Wormwood, and one is giving advice to the other on how to tempt humans. And of course, they're a little cartoonish, I suppose you could say, but I try to make my characters a little bit more viable, and so they're having real combat with real rank and structure, all the way from the individual fire teams all the way up to corps level units, and they operate in a 360-degree spherical domain, whereas we're obviously limited by our mortality, and they interplay with all of the human characters who work on the on our mortal plane. And these people are involved heavily in politics. So we talk a lot about political issues and Washington, D.C. A lot of it takes place in and around Washington, D.C., which I know a little bit. And so it's a great spiritual conflict. And they as things are happening in Congress and they're debating this and that, there's also spiritual warfare going on at the same time. So that's a whole series that's coming out as soon as I can. One is finished, and I'll get it published as soon as I can find a publisher. and then a whole bunch of other ones will come shooting down the line. It's not one every 2 months like certain great writers write, but maybe one a year. We'll see.
Well, that's great. Watcher, do we have any questions that have come in?
Let me read through the chat here a little bit. No, mostly people just enjoying what they're reading and enjoying it and talking about always welcome more Clancy-like novels. So
Good. Well, we got the right audience for you then, Mike.
Oh, hold on. Here we go. JSUP says, Mr. Bentley, do you conclude that the CCP have Club Ks in Mexico too? I think that would be too easy not to exploit.
Oh, can you repeat that? I didn't quite get. I heard.
Certainly. Hold on. In fact, I'll pull it up.
And I heard Mexico, and I probably say yes, but what is it?
So there you go. Do you conclude that the CCP have Club Ks in Mexico too? I'm actually not sure what he means by that. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what he means, but I'm pretty sure that they have. Well, it's almost 100% sure. I would say it's 100% sure that they have agents here. So I think they have agents in every place on Earth. They have their Belt and Road initiative going virtually worldwide. Every port, every seaport, every airport, every road, every highway, every train track has dual purposes. One for wonderful, peaceful civilian use and free and fair trade, and the other one for military purposes and exploitable trade. So I would say yes, undoubtedly the CCP has all kinds of things going on in Mexico.
Yeah. Great. Well, Mike, where can people get your book, and how can people connect with you?
Oh, great. Yeah, I can be reached at mbentley1897@yahoo.com. It's my email. Probably the best way to get me. Then I can kind of. I'm a school teacher. I work full time, so I'm a special education teacher in a high school here in the Bay Area, California Bay Area. And this bastion of conservatism out here. And I have a lot of fun with my high school students. They're a lively and very good bunch, and we talk about everything. So mbentley1897@yahoo.com, and I'm very happy to dialogue with folks via email. And the book is available on Amazon.com. I'm published by Defiance Press and Publishing, a group I just love working with. They've been super. What do we call that thing that's behind us? We call it a poster. What do we call it?
Banner? A banner? I don't know. The banner.
Yeah, I think. Did you get yours there too at the?
Yep, that's where I met you. Your book hadn't come out yet. We were at a censorship meeting or conference that Defiance had, and Mike and I were at opposite ends of the spectrum. But I knew when I saw the cover of his book, I was like, okay, I'm going to get this when it comes out.
Well, it was, it's just super to me. And that was El Hootenanny, where they brought in all of these authors and to cross-pollinate a little bit. It's just wonderful because some of us are just starting out. We're new in writing, and others like you are veterans, and you really take us under your wing and give us advice and opportunity and show us the ropes, and it's invaluable. So Dave Roberts, who's the president there of Defiance, really did a great thing in having these conferences and bringing everybody together.
I agree. It's a lot of fun it's always good to get a bunch of writers together. We all write different stuff, but there's certain parts of what we do in the craft that are always the same, regardless of what the genre is, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else from you, Watcher, you want to ask or has popped up?
No, I think it's fantastic, and I only wish that I could afford to drop money on all the book copies you do, Blaine. I'll be picking it up here pretty soon. So
many thanks.
All right. Well, Mike, thank you very much for coming on. And I know you've got a whole busy day at work.
Thank you very
Thank
much for the
you.
opportunity to meet you, meet your listeners. Really appreciate you're a one person industry. And, we look up to you, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Watcher, thank you very much for helping me pull this together today.
Thank you.
Oh, of
Walter.
course. Do you want to give the folks a little hint as to who we're going to see next week, or should we just let that be a surprise?
We are going to have Edward Nile on next week. Edward has started a new trilogy. I've read the first book in it. It's a mech steampunk Civil War. It's got a lot going on in it, and I totally enjoyed it. Anytime you get big stompy robots, you guys know I'm all over that. I picked the book up just because I saw him post about it up on Amazon or on Facebook. I picked it up. I really enjoyed it. So we're going to talk with Edward Nile.
Very exciting. I'm looking forward to that as well. And then as a quick reminder before we go, this show is, as always, sponsored by IdahoGameGuild.com for all your gaming and hobby needs. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.
Thank you.